Right. Excellent. Welcome everyone to the deep dive on monkey business. Hey, we got a special guest. I saw him just join. Good to see you, monkey. Right on. Feel free to unmute yourself. Say hello.
Hey, what's going on?
Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, you as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, I know you're kind of pressed for time. You got a lot of work to do. So let's take a couple minutes, if you don't mind. I just want to ask you some questions.
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
Cool. So I had two questions for you. One, I'm really curious, sort of like what your daily routine is when it comes to SkyGlass. Like, how do you use it? What mode do you sort of hang into? Kind of what's your daily routine, or do you have it up 24/7? What do you do?
No, I do shut it down just because I've got so much stuff going, depending, especially if I'm in my watch list, just because it's I like to keep it fresh. But my daily is I come in and I look at my watch list first and foremost. I look at all the activity, and then I look at the historical data in that watch list so that I can really see what's going on. It helps me analyze the data better and more clearly. It's hard to just take a snapshot. That's one of the things that I love about SkyGlass is the fact that I'm not looking at something from a top-down perspective. I've got trace lines. I can see where the aircraft has been, the altitudes, the deviations, and it helps you kind of evaluate a lot further than if you were just looking at it, say, in like ODSB or ADSB, for example, right, where there are no trace lines. You're just looking at a snapshot in time, so to speak, right? So, but yeah, I use that data and I use my watch list, and then from there, I'll actually go into just the regular military stuff, just to see what's up and what's out there, what's flying around, how many of them, and where they tend to congregate. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, good to know. Yeah, I have a similar thing. I figured you would probably hang out on your watch list. And so let me ask you a question about that. You say, when you pull up your watch list, do you just turn on 24-hour traces? Do you do that by aircraft? Do you put them all on at the same time for all aircraft? How do you work with the traces?
Yeah, I do all aircraft, and then I'll do historical views. So I'll go into the little hourglass and click on that, and then I'll look over usually about 3 days. I've got 1,500 and some change, I think maybe close to 1,600 aircraft in my watch list. The big ones like C-17s, I actually keep off. And then I only, I can see the numbers, I can see what's up, but I don't pull them into my load because if I do that, it'll bog everything because there are so many of them. And so I'll leave those out. But and then I'm a little careful with the survey flights in terms of how far back I look. If I go 30 days, 45 days, 60 days on the survey flights, that is a long, because keep in mind, it's tracing every 5 seconds. And so it's just a very long, it's probably a couple hour load of pulling all those in because it is so many. You're talking, well, now it'd be over probably close to 12,000 flights in the last 60, 90 days. Well, probably 90 days. Yeah. Wow. Which is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of data. That crunches a lot. Just real quick, what kind of computer are you running? Like, what's the sort of quick version of that?
Yeah, I've got a gamer computer. It's got just crazy, super high speed with all the little neon lights that circle. I can't remember off the top of my head who.
So it's custom built though.
I think it's a custom built through. I think a company's called like Empower or.
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, that's because my son is I'm a big gamer too, but not on computers. But my son's a big gamer and he's the one that recommended that computer to me, but it's actually not as crazy. It's super high speed and a lot of memory. And of course I'm also pushing through fiber optic and it's actually hardwired. I don't have it on Wi-Fi, but it's running, 5 gig. So it's very fast.
Very smart. Yeah. Right on. Okay. Last question for you.
Yeah.
What's your sort of primary method or sources for building up your watch list? Like what's your strategy with regard to the watch list? I know you've been working on this for a while and you got, over 1,000 now, but what's your go-to?
Yeah, I typically, I started out using ADSB Exchange to get my initial data, and I loaded those into my watch list. But what I really do is I pulse my community. I have so many amazing followers that actually feed me data on a regular basis that I'll actually take that information. I'll research it myself to make sure it's indeed, like for survey flights, for example. And then I'll just, I pull that in and I start to build off of those. Once you have one element, for example, like say I'm tracing a survey flight, if you get that company name and you just click in SkyGlass onto that company name and load it into under registration, it'll give you all their aircraft. And then so from there you can actually build on it. And that's what I've been doing. So for example, the survey planes, I think we're at 450 and some change, I think, around that in terms of survey aircraft that are out flying around on a regular basis. So but that's how I do it. It's just a matter of I catch one and then I record the hex code for it, and I'll drop that into my watch list, and then I'll create something for that. So like the Russian ones, every time I see one, I load it in. If I don't already have it, I add it. UN, same way. So it just depends on what I'm looking at. But now I've got weather modification companies, and I've got all kinds of stuff in there now that I can basically shred that data depending on what I'm trying to find and what I'm looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, when I discovered the database and started to implement that and discovered, like, wow, to be able to pull the thread, like you were saying. Remember we did that at the very beginning with Brio 68. It was like, Lasai, and then searching on Lasai, and then like, oh my gosh, there's all these other
They've got a lot. Yeah.
fleet. Yeah.
Yeah. The only ones that I've found to be very elusive so far are the Navy P8s. Like those guys they roll their hex codes. They roll like they are so below radar. The only way that we were even able to find and track when they blew up the Nord Stream was because SkyGlass is so powerful of a tool. You can go and look over that area and just watch it. And then here it comes. You can see the NA, Navy P8 rolling through. And that's how we were able to trace it. I watched one yesterday do something similar in terms of the flight pattern and where it went over the Baltic Sea back up to Iceland. And I tried to load it into my database, and that hex code it's not in there. And I'm like, oh, you guys, these are agency birds. Yeah, they're pretty incredible. So.
Wow. And what is the P8 again? That's not the Sub Hunter. That's a P3. What's the P8?
No, the P8's a Sub Hunter too. It's a Navy. It's called the Poseidon, and it's a super powerful on steroids. It's got external mounts for weapon drops and internal bomb bays, and it's got all kinds of stuff. It's a 737 airframe, but it is it's like I said, it's on steroids. I mean, you imagine taking a 737 and throwing 11 external weapon mounts on it, plus a bomb bay, and you've got a very capable aircraft. It can fly at decent altitudes. It can get down at low altitudes. And the weapon system on it, that new, what they call the Hawk torpedo, so to speak, it has, it's deployable at altitude and at cruise speed. So you can drop it at 30, 40,000 feet at 500 something miles an hour, and it'll come out and deploy a chute, and it'll just, carry on its way to its target. So it's pretty powerful weapon system.
Wow, amazing. And does that platform, the P8, does it also have a lot of sensor arrays and pick up that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. It can look down in the water. It's got all kinds of stuff on it. It's most of it's probably classified, if I had to guess, as to what it can really do, but it's got all kinds of capabilities that the general populace probably doesn't know. So.
Wow. Cool stuff. Good man. Right on.
Man.
Well, hey, I tell you, I have learned so much. I've learned so much just watching your sit reps and really, getting the downloads on all these different types and all that kind of stuff. And it's really enabled me to go deeper with the SkyGlass in a lot of different ways. So I really appreciate you, brother, for doing all that, and appreciate all the work that you put in every week after week, man. You're a machine. Love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I got to tell you, I don't know where I'd be today if it wasn't for SkyGlass. The technology and capability that this thing produces is unmatched. I mean, it's because of the ability to go sideways on it and look at different altitude deviations. It's just it takes it to the next level. And I know what you got coming in that. I can't wait for that stuff. So this is going to be good. I'm excited about what you got on the horizon.
Me too. Me too. Thank you for saying that.
bet.
Yeah. So just if people didn't see it a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week, was it? I sent a little clip of the round map, the globe, with this great camera move and that kind of fun stuff. And I'm really trying hard to do. I've got a weather source that I'm negotiating with, and they do NOTAMs, AirMets, SIGMETs, and they do this very cool 3D storm cell tracking, which is like, I've never seen any of that kind of stuff, especially in 3D. So I'm working on a great bunch of stuff in that regard, and it'll be a little while before that's out for testing, etc. But yeah, that'll be fun. Good stuff. Cool, man.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you, man. And I'll listen in for a little bit, then I'm going to boogie. I've got an egg salad sandwich with my name all over it right here. I'm going to try and get into it.
Got to go refuel, man. Right on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Good stuff. All right. Well, as I said when we get started here, feel free to unmute yourself. And if you want to interrupt me to ask a question anytime, I love the Q&A and getting the feedback from you guys, and through questions is always really valuable. If you're not actively asking a question, please keep yourself on mute so that there's no background chatter and that kind of stuff and feedback. I also ask, if you're comfortable with it, please keep your camera on so that I can ask questions and kind of, ask for people to raise their hand and kind of give me a quick visual feedback that way. And just to reinforce one more time, the chat is a great way to give me feedback if you'd like. Please leave any comments or questions in there. I'm not really good at doing following the chat to get questions, but I've signed up Ren to sort of monitor that and interrupt me when there's something that important comes through there on that side. So time to raise subscription price. Thanks for that.
Along that line, AE7YH John has put a feature request in the chat, which is kind of interesting, and he's also put some links for information on the P8s. So
awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Oh, nice. No, we'll pull it. I'm glad that'll be saved in chat. Awesome. Okay, good stuff. All right, and so let me share my screen and we'll go over the agenda for today. Right, let's do this. And we're going to minimize that because that's a little bit later. Yeah, go right ahead. All right, cool. Okay, there we go. Okay, first off, let me ask you this too. Can you, I'm going to increase my pointer size to something absurdly large just so that there's no problem for folks to see my screen and my pointer and all that stuff. Okay, awesome. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to be talking about how to get the watch list from MonkeyWorks US, the website, and how to import that into SkyGlass. We're going to talk about some live view techniques, kind of based on what Monkey does with his, looking at the mill ops mode and the watch list, etc. We're going to talk about how to use the database to build up your watch list. And we'll pull some threads on that. We'll search on some interesting keywords. We'll also then take that another step further and show how to run the flight history reports by watchlist group. That's something that Monkey does specifically that we wanted to cover. And then we'll talk about how to do some time travel investigation techniques. If you remember, SkyGlass can look back 2020 of March is when the data begins. So yeah, you can go back several years and pull flight history every 5 seconds. That stuff is recorded. So we'll show how to, do some investigation. I think we'll actually work the Nord Stream pipeline example as well, and dial that one in and kind of look at that too. And then throughout and at the end, we'll talk about some tips and tricks of getting the most out of SkyGlass. And of course, anytime, if you've got a question, feel free to raise your hand, unmute, and get into it. Okay, so let me get SkyGlass running here. And first thing I wanted to load or talk about was MonkeyWorks' watch list. So monkeyworks.us is the web URL for his site, and it's very simple. You go to the shop page and then you just type in SkyGlass, search on that, and this is a free item. You just add it to your cart, go through the checkout process, and then you can download it right there. Or it actually, once you've made the free purchase, it will send you a link, an email, and you can get it that way as well. Might as well pick up some good soaps and some good stuff, some good merch while you're in there. But the SkyGlass watch list is free, and he updates that pretty often. So that's how you get the watch list. When you download it into your computer, it's just going to be in your downloads folder. And so let's talk about that next. Let's do the first thing into importing that watch list. All right. So, okay, great. So here I've got SkyGlass open. This is the current version, which is released version 1.6.14. I did mention we do have an update coming out soon, but that's more of a bug fix update, not the big fun one. That one's going to be 2.0. At any rate, okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this watch list. I have my watch list open. Make this really large so everybody can see that easily. Perfect. And the watch list, of course, is the big banner in the auxiliary button stack. We turn that on. I'm going to burn my watch list just so I can clear it completely. And then, so what you will do is you've already downloaded it to your hard drive, Monkey's List, and you want to grab, push this button with a blue folder that has the chevrons pointing down as an import. Got it. And click on that button. And then SkyGlass will ask you, do you want to add to your watch list or replace, delete what you've got and replace it? You can do that either way. And so let me just add that. And then you go find your downloads folder, grab the list and import. So I will tell you this, Monkey's got a very fast machine, so he probably doesn't bother him. Mine's not quite as fast. And so there are a lot of secondary searches that Monkey has enabled. Okay, so the first thing I do is disable all the secondary searches, and that's in the watch list header. You can see where my mouse is now. In the auxiliary header, which is open by default, there's this sort of magnifying glass with a plus sign with the international no symbol on it. You can click that while this thing is running, but you can see, and I'll explain more about the secondary searches in a second, but you can see it's sort of, it's chugging along here. If you click on the secondary search, cancel button, it's going to turn off all the secondary searches, and then the watch list is going to load immediately. Okay. The secondary searches are useful when you have an aircraft that is not, that sometimes transmits in ADS-B protocol, or sometimes in mode S. There is a sort of a secondary search that has a wider net, so to speak. And those aircraft are caught more often in that zone. I think some of the C-17s and the P-8s, some of those other ones, if you notice, like if you go into the mill mode and you see it, but then you burn and open up your watch list and it's not reading, you can turn on the secondary search and see then if it pops that way. Again, it's just kind of a wider net. The downside is that those secondary searches have to be done one by one, whereas the rest of the stuff I do in these big batches. So if you have a bunch of them enabled, it can slow down your overall load of the watch list. Okay. Did that make sense? Yes.
I have
go ahead.
for unforeseen reasons, I have to leave the meeting. So is there going to be another class like this sometime?
Absolutely. And I also am recording this and I will post this on my YouTube channel so you can catch it later.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, always check out the live training calendar, and I post the intro to SkyGlasses, and then occasionally we'll do some deep dives. And so there'll be, I update the schedule pretty often. So check there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Awesome. Okay. While we're on the subject, I'm just curious. How many of you guys have watched or been part of the Intro to SkyGlass classes? Awesome, most of you. And then how many have been in one or the more of the deep dives? Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, great. That's super. Perfect. Okay. So any questions? Yes, sir.
We've got a question here in chat. Is the person's using it, let's see, who's it? It's Cam, is asking on an iPad, is there a way yet to download directly rather than having to do the download to the desktop and then, put it up in the cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. At this point, the only way to get to import Watchlist into your iPad or your iOS device or the Android, anything mobile, is from the cloud. So you've got to start on your desktop machine. You've got to import it there, push it up to the cloud using this button here, which is the cloud up button, and that puts it on your local SkyGlass account, and then you can go on your device and download it. I have not worked out a way yet to do the download to your device and do that locally. That is on my to-do list, but I haven't done it yet. Cool. All right. Excellent. Any other questions before I move on? Was any questions about how to import the watch list? Oh, we're all good. Okay, got a thumbs up. Excellent. All right. So as you can see here, let me clean up my interface a little bit, and we'll talk about sort of some of the basics and some of the settings that he's got loaded here. Let me turn off that. Okay, and we'll do this. Okay, cool. All right. So as you can see, Monkey has, you can see these red groups that have been sort of redded out. These are, so in the watch list and in the type list panel, there are functions that are what I call, isolate and hide mode. And so these groups that are in red have been hidden from view. All right. Let me do this so it'll be a little easier to see. Yeah. And as Monkey talked about, the C17s were something that sort of, clutter up the view. So he usually turns those off, puts them into hide mode. I'm going to unhide them. And you can see now that they're on the screen. If you do a left click on any of these group headers, that will put it into isolate mode. Like I have here, this group has now been isolated. So we only are seeing the C17s. If you right click using your mouse, then it goes into the hide mode. So it shows everything else, but it hides that group. On the mobile devices, it's sort of a multiple tap. Tap once to isolate, tap again to hide, tap again to release it and be in normal view.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when on my computer here, the red does not come up. When I right click on it, it takes it off the blue. I put it on blue, then I go right click and it goes off back to like aerial survey. Right. When I right mine, but on my phone, if I tap it twice, then it'll go to red. I'm not sure if it's my computer or if it's this dumb little thing here.
Yeah, I haven't thought about, it's a good point. Let me make a quick note of that. But you do have a right click enabled on your mouse. Is it a 3-button mouse? Because that could be the issue.
I'll have to check on that, but I know it right clicks, but I'll check on that.
Okay, so Thomas, I'm happy to work with you offline about this. Let's do a team viewer session and we can qualify some stuff. It does remind me though, I'm not actually certain that I've done a keyboard shortcut for the right click for those that have trackpads and things like that for this isolate mode function.
Okay.
I have to remind myself. So good point. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there another question? All right, I'll push forward. Okay, great. All right, so let me get my speaker notes here, make sure I'm covering everything. All right. Okay, and so we talked about the secondary searches. We talked about how to download the list, import them. While we're talking about that, if you want to share your list with other folks, you can always do that by clicking this, the purple folder, not the blue one. That's save out your watch list on the Discord channel. We've got a special thread there that people share their watch lists. My technique, just so you know, I love getting Monkey's updated list, but then I sort of have done my own, sleuthing, and I like to watch some of the search and rescue aircraft and the sheriff and police and law enforcement, the LEO fleets. And so I generally, when I import, I will do an add. And so it'll combine them, and you're safe. It's not going to add any duplicates. It does that sort of error checking, and it won't add them as a new, as a duplicate entry. The thing that it will do though, is if that aircraft is being imported, it will overwrite the whatever group or other information that are in there. So the label for the aircraft and the group, distinction, those will get updated. So those are the things to think about when you're adding in something like that. The other thing just to note here is, like, how do I get out of this? This is something that it will be fixed in a future version, but right now the sort of workaround is, well, you just keep moving forward, say add, and then cancel. And then you'll be back to your sort of, native state here with the watch list.
One
Okay?
question.
Yes, sir.
If you add something to an existing watch list, and I'm sure I asked this before, but I'm getting old and the brain cells don't work so well. I have added several things to Monkey's list. Do those get saved to his list when you add them, or
Right.
if I
It's
if
a
I
good
track
question.
something? Yeah,
Yeah, so no, the watch list that's running on your device is
Right.
local to that device. So you're not updating his list or anything like that. Everything's sort of localized. And keep in mind, that's as well as, my desktop machine and my phone or my iPad, those are independent lists. So if you've added one on your phone, let's say, that's not going to automatically update to your desktop machine. You'll just need to use the cloud to save it up to the cloud and then go back to your other device and download it. So that's how you.
so if I save something and add it to Monkey's list on my machine, it won't stay there. If I close this list and open it, what I added is gone, correct?
No, so let me make a distinction. Once you've imported Monkey's list, it's now your watch list.
Right.
Okay, and if you add other aircraft to it, you've added aircraft to your watch list, and it will persist on that device the next time you open up SkyGlass.
That's all I needed to know.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what I like to do too is, depending on my purpose in the moment, like what's my mission profile for that? If I want to do a deep dive on, let's say rescue aircraft or, these survey flights or something like that, I will export my watch list and save it out to disk. So I've kind of got my, like, here's my backup, and then I'll burn it and then do my work, figure out my stuff, and just kind of be working with a smaller list. And then when I'm finished, I'll either export that out to save it as its own group or, its own watch list, and then re-import my other watch list that I exported previously. I'll often do this for, one of my users will say, hey, I'm part of this fleet. And so I'll go pull all their fleet information and we'll do, I'll show them how to run reports and stuff like that. And so you may want to get in the practice of, exporting, importing, and then, knowing that when you import, you can obviously add or replace, but you kind of think of it like, just like a regular text file or some sort of a file that's on your computer. Make backups. You can obviously import it. I keep it very fluid. You don't have to be afraid of, modifying it, especially if you've got some backups, things like that. Did that answer your question? Probably a little more verbosely. Okay. All right, great. Any other questions before I push on? I'll take a little sip. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we talked about secondary searches, how to clear that so you can make your watch list quite speedy. A couple other things just while we're here, you can see when you do an export and then a further import, even these settings like what groups have been isolated or hidden, or what groups are expanded versus collapsed, all that kind of stuff is included. Some of the settings like I only want to see watch list aircraft that are up versus all aircraft. If we've got them expanded here, like let me expand this aerial survey group 435. Right now, the setting is show me all aircraft. If you click on the sort of solo aircraft profile in the watch list header, you'll see that now reduces to only the aircraft that are flying. Does that make sense? Everybody familiar with that functionality? All right. So I like to keep my watch list, a very tight view, such as this. So I can see, basically what's up, what's down, as in a group sort of level. And just as a review, if the group has no aircraft that are active, it's going to be in this sort of muted orange, and then it's bright orange if there is an aircraft that is actually active in that group. So we can see there's a lot of variation here. And of course, you've got your counts, like for the aerial survey, for example, we got 24 of the 436 that are active at this moment. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So from here, I'm going to close my watch list. I'm going to go into live view and kind of cover the same type of information. I'm already in military mode, so I'm just going to turn on the auto refresh, and I'll bump up my auto refresh to 1 minute, just so we're not hogging resources while we're active here. And you'll notice after a couple of refresh cycles, or actually in the first refresh cycle, the watch list aircraft, unless they're already part of military, got swept away. All right, so in the same way that there is an isolate and hide mode in your watch list, you can do the same thing with the type list panel. And so if you watch Monkey for a while, you'll notice that he sort of leads off with a live view, and then he takes the trainers out, so it kind of gives you a different count of the aircraft that are not sort of more in the normal operations range as far as the military mode. So I'm going to show you how you do that. All right, so we know that the Tex 2s and T-38s are the two main classes of the aircraft that are in the training fleets. And you'll notice that there's a few Air Force bases like these ones in Texas where you just get these big clusters of Tex 2s, etc. And so if you open up the type list and you're in the default mode, that number will probably be closer to the top. You can also change the type list viewing list mode into alphabetical, and then you can sort of look right in the T's. So let me reverse that, put it back into count mode. And so simply right click on the Tex 2s, and I'm going to right click on the T-38s, and you'll see that those now show in red. That means they've been hidden from view. And now you can get a nice accurate count of all the non-training aircraft that are flying. So as a review, mil mode is worldwide, but there is a count of what you're actually viewing on screen. So if you change your viewing angle and perspective and zoom out so that you're just seeing, CONUS like I am here, then you look at the top right-hand corner and we've got this on-screen count. 189 is sort of what's up over CONUS at the moment. If I kick this off to the side and zoom out even more so that I can kind of see, even though the map isn't tiled in, you can see Europe on the other side there. Now you can see we've got an on-screen count of 222. If I bring my rotation back, so I'm just looking at CONUS, now I've got it back at about 190. Does that make sense? Excellent. Okay. Other fun thing that Monkey loves to show off is the the perspective view of SkyGlass, kicking it off to the side and then extending this relative height slider. That's this in the group of two vertical sliders, which are activated in the auxiliary button stack. These the slider button here, it's the one on the right. All the way up, it gives you kind of a really nice separation if you rotate off to the side here. Rotation of the camera, just for most people probably know this, but for those that may be watching afterwards, right click and drag rotates the camera. If you are on a mobile device, you rotate the camera sort of a two-step process. First thing you need to do is minimize the UI, which is the bottom button on the main button stack, and then just tap anywhere in this sort of right-hand quadrant and an on-screen joystick will pop up and you can rotate from there. That was the most efficient sort of implementation that we could think about, that I could brainstorm with all this UI. So just, as I said, minimize the UI and then tap on this bottom right hand corner and you'll get the rotation joystick. Okay. In case you did not know, this relative height slider, if you bring it all the way to the bottom, that is actual altitude based on the map zoom level. Right. So if you're at this really far zoomed out sort of perspective, might as well be a flat map. But if you have dialed in your home location and zoom the map in, and you're kind of looking at an an airport sort of level or a city level, then that relative height, when you're at the actual height, can be more meaningful, and there's some meaningful separation. But when you're zoomed out, you'll want to, bring this up higher, and then you'll be able to, discern these flight levels quite easily. All right. All right, cool. So that kind of covers the basics of the sort of the live view mode. When you close the type list panel, any selections that you have made will return. So you'll see the text twos and everything will kind of jump back. The other way to do that while your type list panel is open, let me pull those out again, is just hitting this 2 arrows in a circle button on the top in the type list panel. That will reset any changes that you had made to hide or isolate modes. All right. I really like this sort of isolate mode, especially with like the K35Rs, the refuelers. Isolate those, and you can kind of get a quick view. Oh, you can see where they've all been heading. And then if your traces are on, I like to dial in traces, 3-6 hours, and then you can show the traces for all of that type in the type list panel by clicking on that trace icon there in the type list entry. Give that a second to do its thinking, and we'll see those types or those traces start to fill in. All right. It's going to talk about this later as well, but the types can also be, the traces, as well as the size of all these icons, the thickness of that trace can be shown and thickened up when you use the this slider on the left. All right, that might be helpful, especially when you're doing flight histories on things like the survey planes, that do these really tight patterns and all that. If the thickness is too thick, or the size is too thick, they'll overlap and you can't really see exactly the patterning. So you can make them, thin them out to kind of look at something in more detail. Let me give you a good example of that. So you can see if it's too high, they'll begin to overlap each other. So just bring them down, and then you can see the nice distinction of the detail in the trace. All right, so while we're talking about traces, a lot of people miss this. In the type list panel, you'll see these color swatches on the right of each entry. That governs the trace colors. This is where you adjust the trace colors. They're all by type. They're not by altitude or anything like that, like any other platform. They're all by type. Somebody unmute. You have a question? Nope. All right, Ms. Phantom. So to adjust that color, it's very easy. Click on the swatch itself, and that'll bring up this little picker panel. You've got this big color swatch here, and you basically first select the color that you want, and then click on either start or end, and you'll notice that those will update in real time on the display if those aircraft traces are colored up or active. And then just to close that panel, click on the X. Before I do though, so the start, if you think about the start of the trace is the oldest trace, right? So where they took off, the start of that flight is the oldest trace, and it will end at the butt of the aircraft, right? So that's how you have to think about start and end when you're thinking about the trace. So the end color is the most recent trace point. Start is the oldest. Thought I heard somebody unmute. Did they have a question? Anyone? I like questions because it gives me a chance to refresh my throat here. Okay, nothing? All right, how are we doing on chat? Okay, go ahead. All right, excellent. All right, so let me clean this up. I'm going to turn the isolate mode of the K35s off by just clicking the left-hand corner and backing that up. And as you can see, since I had rendered those traces for just the K35Rs, now you can kind of get a feel for, now we're in military mode. We can see where all the refueling's happening. Kick it up on the top. One technique that I find useful also, this is a 3D, even though it is a flat map, when you've got the relative height slider maximized, you get a little distortion of the traces and the positions based on the parallax, and where you are on the map, or where you are viewing the map. And you can kind of see that as we move around. You can see like this trace off on the coast. Is that reading for everybody okay? Let me turn off the icons so we can see the traces alone. So you can see as I parallax over this, you can see it sort of, creeps closer to the coast. And that's really just because of the distortion of the 3 dimensions. So if you're looking at traces and you kick it up to the top, so you're kind of wanting to look at a top-down view, just pop the relative height slider down to the bottom. And now you can see, really the geography of that trace. Does that make sense? So now it'll stick because there's no parallax, right? That parallax has been removed because we brought everything down to the map surface level. So then, you want to kick it back to the side, pop it back up, and now you can see those different flight levels, etc. Is that making sense? Cool. Is that helpful? I don't think I've ever talked about that technique actually before. So cool. It can be hard to really, especially when you're kind of at this, the 3D view, the side angle is so great, but it's like, well, where is that aircraft? Like, what's it over, right? And so what I do is, instead of, you can always drop it down and kick up and do this kind of dance. The other thing is, in the HUD on the top right, this location button toggles this other pop-up panel here, which does a reverse geocode lookup and gives you a vector of that location. So you can, hover over an aircraft and that'll update and then give you this vector like this. Our Snoop 32 is over Nebraska, 41 miles north of Grand Island. Now, I don't know where Grand Island is, but it can kind of give you some quick references before you want to look down deeper. All right. I'll pause for questions. Anything? Okay, cool. All right, so that covers the sort of live view. I think that the live view topics. All right, so I see David. Oh, got it. All right, he's answering a question for the other one. I missed the link for the file to import. Okay, so there's two, let me cover that just to be clear. There are two ways, or sort of two methods, when you're talking about Watchlist and sharing Watchlist. There's a physical, that's that's hard to, maybe that's not so meaningful. There is a way to export and import the list to a file that will, and then you can, save that out to your computer, wherever you want, to your downloads folder, to your own, I have a list of, a directory that's dedicated to just different watch lists. So that is, these folder icons will do a sort of more manual export and import, and you're saving a copy of that file out as a text file out on your computer. The cloud up and down, that is simply, you have, as part of your username, have a little space on my server. And when you upload to the cloud, that's just basically making a backup, a cloud backup of your watch list only to you up in the cloud. So you can go to a different device and then download it using the cloud down button. Okay, it's just a simple way for you to move your personal watch list from one machine or one computer or one device to another. There is no way to share that piece, not yet. I am working on that. That's actually going to be in part of the next update. You'll be able to share that publicly, and then you'll be able to go and look at all those that have been shared publicly, and we'll be able to upvote, downvote them, kind of do some social stuff in that way. So that answers that question on how to import and export, and then to move up and down in your little personal cloud space on the SkyGlass server. All right. So let's transition now into the database. I'm going to turn the database on. I'm going to load it, which is this sort of database icon in the auxiliary button stack. Always takes a few seconds to load the first time because it is quite so large. So we'll give that a second to refresh. And what I wanted to talk about here is, using the database to build up your watch list. As we talked about at the beginning section with Monkey, often you'll find one aircraft and you'll get that tail number or the hex code for that aircraft. And from there, you can kind of go pull the thread on that. So let me just do that. Let me, oops, hold on. Oh boy, I just messed that up, didn't I? Yeah. All right, so I just did this. This is actually being fixed in the next version as well. You'll notice I tried to move that and there's a bit of a bug in that move. So I'm going to need to exit out of SkyGlass and just come back in. Sorry about that. Significant pain point when you're using the the database. That window gets jugged off to the side and you can't bring it back. All right, so as I was saying, to open up the database is this window here. What I'm going to first do is I'm going to switch into standard mode. And I'm going to turn off auto refresh. I'm going to switch into standard mode by just clicking on the shield. And that's going to bring me into a home location. And turn this back up. Did someone have a question while I'm working this example? Anyone? No? Okay. So that's what I'm doing wrong. Okay. So here I'm going to go to my local area. I'm in the Boca Raton area. Click enter. That's going to bring my home location down. I've got my search radius low, and I will load traffic. And I'm going to bump the zoom up just a little bit, and I'm going to turn the watch list off just so we're going to be looking at just that local area. And since I'm zooming in, I'm going to want to bring that relative height slider down until I can kind of see where the tops of those flight levels are. If you don't do this, then a significant number of traffic are going to be off screen. So you always want to bring that down. Got my size up too high, so let me lower this as well. There we go. All right. And so let's just kind of pull the thread on some masked aircraft. So I'm going to turn off the normies, and that's in the filter class here, this on the left, the blue aircraft. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to take all those off screen. And since we have the database, I'm going to turn the database panel on for each aircraft, which will also, check and make sure the database is loaded. So we'll do that next. So I'm opening up the database functionality without opening up the database interface, if that makes sense. So on the aircraft, there are all these different segments of the panel. You're probably familiar with the types and the call signs and the telemetry. This one is the owner operator will show there. And so that's kind of what I'm wanting to do, is just turn on the owner operators and kind of look around to see something kind of interesting. And you'll probably find in this area, we'll find some, traffic that does tourist stuff. There's some, folks that get out to the islands, etc. All right, so let's pick up this G2 Aviation LLC just for giggles here. All right, so again, we're talking about how to sort of build a watch list or do some watch list work while you're actually, no, let me look at this Mariflyer of Texas. That sounds a little more interesting. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this hex code. If you've hovered over an aircraft and you see their data, just as a review, if you see something that highlights in green or has a little box in green, you can click on that, and that's going to put that onto your clipboard. Now I'm going to open up the watch list, the database interface, clicking on the database in the auxiliary button stack. And since I've already loaded it up, we don't have to wait for it. And then in this input entry, I'm just going to paste Command V, and then we've got that hex code. I'm going to, the default is the ICAO hex code as a search parameter, so I'm just going to search on it. And then boom, we've got this, we do have this this list here. So let me make this a little bit easier for people to see, expand it a little bit, make that larger. All right, is that readable for folks? We seeing this? Okay, great. Excellent. So again, if you hover and you see it turn green, that means it's clickable. It's going to put that on your clipboard. So now I'm going to grab the AmeriFlyers of Texas and paste that into my search area. Change this search parameter to owner operator. Good thing to note here, if you have an entry, if you have a result in the database results window, if you do another search, it's going to keep adding that to your results window. All right. It's important to know that because this can be useful if you are trying to create multiple searches to get a long list to then add them all as a watch list group. This would be the way to do it, to not clear it every time, or you can clear the results and then do a search. All right, great. So now we've got, boom, all these different aircraft, AmeriFlyers of Texas. I really have no idea who these guys are. I just picked them at random just because they happen to be over this area and, seems like out of Texas. All right, so what I'm going to do now, another thing that can be useful now that I've got that data of this owner operator on my clipboard, I can click in the enter a watch list group name, paste, and then what I like to do is make this a little bit smaller just so that it's easier to read on my watch list. So I'll just do that as AmeriFlyers of Tex. And if I click on the add to watch list as a new group, now that we've got a little feedback in between the search and clear, we got 49 aircraft that are now added to a new watch list group. So, all right, let's go check out their activity. How's that sound? I'm going to click on close. I'm going to burn just so I can kind of clean up the interface. So now I'm going to sort of reorient to get back to my CONUS view, Continental United States. So that's going to be a map zoom that's sort of out towards the wider end. And I'm going to click on CONUS in my favorite places list. All right. Now that we're in standard mode, that doesn't really matter. However, good thing to remember, when the watch list comes up, the watch list will obey the class filtering. All right. So, excuse me. So right now we only have the military and masked aircraft. We don't have the normies. So if you're like, well, I know it's on my watch list, but I don't see it, it's not coming up, you may want to make sure that your aircraft classes are enabled to show all the aircraft in your watch list. So we'll watch this. I'll click on I'll enable the normies and reload the watch list. And now you'll see we've got a few more aircraft that are popping, right? All right, so let me turn off the database label just so we can see that a little bit easier. Did that make sense? Classes in watch list and how that can, okay. If you're moving in and out of military mode, sometimes you may forget that, oh, I turned off the normies in my standard mode. So let me work that example. If you're in mil mode, all right, when you switch into mil mode, it's automatically going to remove that filter panel because it's not actually useful, but you can get it back by just clicking on the filter button. And then you'll bring that back up again. So now these are going to be, this will affect your watch list and what's loaded based on that class. Make sense? All right, a little diversion there. Okay, so let me burn. So we remove all the military, and I'm just going to wait till we see this, wait for the watch list to finish loading. And let's check out this AmeriFlyers. All right, so now I'm going to do a left click so we can kind of isolate that. And we'll say, yeah, we got a bunch over Texas. Surprisingly, we got a bunch over Florida too. That's interesting. Also interesting to me is that most are in the standard class, meaning they have not been, they're not part of the LAD masked system. Everybody understand what LAD means, the masked category, or should I cover that? Okay, so there are two programs that the FAA has that are sort of like pay to play to get scrubbed from the public facing feeds. Any flight tracking application that gets their data from the FAA are required to actually filter out anything that's part of this LAD or PIA program. The LAD program, Limited Aircraft Data Display, that's what that stands for. That is vastly the majority of the aircraft have that. That's sort of the like, hey, I'm just a private owner and I don't want to be in the public, feed views. So you can, enroll in the Limited Aircraft Data Display program. The PIA, Private Identification Aircraft, I always get that one messed up. PIA is more for these aircraft transponder manufacturers, folks that need blocks of rolling hex codes. So they're actually enabled by the FAA to, within one device, be rolling over their hex codes for their own testing purposes. The distinction is for LAD are always going to be in this sort of magenta purple. And then if you see one, when you're filtering for massed aircraft that has a bright green profile, that's in the PIA program. It's 1 in 100, if that, 1 in 1,000. Very rare to see the PIA aircraft, but they are out there. But they do have a different color distinction. At any rate, so now let's kind of get into the next piece of this. And again, I'm sorry if the AmeriFlyer is to make them an example here, but let's pull the thread a little bit further. So let's look at their history over the last several days. Monkey does this obviously for all his different groups, and then he actually does a screen recording of that. He doesn't do those live because they take a little bit of time to generate, but he does a screen recording and then shows that during his sit reps. But let's do that now. So what we want to do is we're going to do a flight history report for this group. And if you remember, the flight history is the hourglass icon. So it's very simple. You go to the watch list header, click on the hourglass icon, and it'll give you a warning, say, hey, you're about ready to switch modes here into out of live tracking mode into part of their time travel flight history mode. Say, yep, proceed. Wait for the aircraft to clear. That's going to pull up a new group or a new window here. Let me make this a little bit higher, a little bit easier to see. Let me clean up my interface a little bit more. Okay, great. All right. So, and then with this, if you're just like, hey, I want to look right now, back a few days, you're already set up. The time travel date time picker will be defaulted to now. And all of those hex codes for all of the aircraft of that group will have already been loaded up here. You can see them in the, ganged up in this is an input panel. And then if you've activated the flight history report system with that group icon or that group button, then the name of that group will be automatically filled in here. So you can kind of know, what you're doing, especially if you do a screen grab, something like that, you'll know what fleet you're looking at. All right, so let me just do like a 5-day report. And again, we're looking at now back the last 5 days. Keep in mind, the historical data that's available through this, from the daily reports, you'll probably get a gap of like now through this morning, right? So today is not going to be accessible in this. The data is there. It's a little bit spotty in the last hour, and then it starts to fill in nice and consistently. The ADS-B exchange system, they have to do a lot of work to consolidate this data and then start to lock it down. So you won't get every 5 seconds from the last hour. You'll get about once a minute. And then once you get out past about an hour, hour and a half, then you'll start to get every 5 seconds. But this flight history reporting is going to start sort of yesterday and the days before that. Okay. All right. So we got a 5-day report. What I like to do is turn on the traces here so that they will automatically be rendered on screen as they are filled in, and then just click on this button to start the report. All right, so the first thing it's going to do is go back and pull all the hex codes for the last 5 days, and now it's actually going by hex code and saying, was it in that list for that? Did it fly that day? And if it did, then it's going to go pull the traces for that and then start rendering them. So let me make this a little bit smaller so we can see these traces start to come through. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to change my map style just so we've got a lighter background. And so the traces will be nice and visible. There we go. All right, so the UI, as this is working, is going to be a little twitchy because it's doing a lot of thinking, a lot of downloading right now. As you can see, some of these flight durations are huge, 12 hours, 23 hours. They were up almost all day long, etc. All right, so, and then you kind of just have to wait for this thing to finish up before pushing forward. You can start, looking around, obviously, but your UI is going to be a little bit, it could be a little bit glitchy. And so let me take a moment to just talk about the flight history entries here as a review for those who didn't check out that deep dive. So in each single entry, we've got a bunch of information. Obviously, we have the date of that sortie, that flight. We've got the first trace time and end trace time when it was first detected and the last point. And then it also has does a similar reverse geocode lookup with a vector of the closest metropolitan area. And it shows that. So this one's, 1 mile south of Lighthouse Point, 1 mile northwest of Pompano Beach. So that's in Florida. And then we have the tail number, the registration number, the tail number of the aircraft, and then the duration. Underneath the date, we've got up chevrons and down chevrons. If you click on the up chevron, it will zoom the camera to that starting location. So if we zoom in here, we'll be able to see, you can tell the camera's been zoomed to that start point. Let me bring up the sliders and make this a little bit smaller just so we can see the nice detail. All right. And, I think Murphy's Law is kicking in here. I'm going to go ahead and push on the stop button. Sounds like these guys do a lot of work and there was a lot of aircraft. And so this might have taken, hours to complete. So we got, enough to do the work here. And at last count, it was, 41 different flights were recorded at this point. But let me keep going. All right. So up chevron will take you to the start. The down chevron will take you to the end point. For military aircraft, just so you know, sometimes or often they'll take out of one place, go do their work, and then they'll come back and land. So that, you may not get unless it's actually moving an asset somewhere and taking off and landing somewhere else, you may not get a different starting and end point. But for some of these, there are, looks like these are, and you can tell obviously by the lookup. If something went wrong with the decoding, then you won't get the information. Like this one didn't actually fill out, so there's some sort of a bug. This is a living system with live data, and not all bugs have been squashed at this point. We're getting better at it, or I'm getting better at it, with thanks to my awesome beta testers and folks like Ren. But anyway, so let's find an example that will work. All right, so we've got this guy. I don't know where Bound Brook is, up in New York. And so we took off and landed in a different place. You can see where that pops. All right. So basically, that's how you do sort of the quick look from the watch list group, pull flight history. And then if you want to sort of rinse and repeat, easiest way to do that is, well, if you're looking at different time spans, you can just click on the burn, and that will keep the list of aircraft of that group, enabled, so you can do a different time span or change the dates. And again, the SkyGlass data, the ADSB exchange history goes back a couple of years, starting in 2020. So all you need to do is dial in the different starting date and time, and then change the number of days, and then you can look at different times or different, flight segments of history, I guess, different weeks, etc.
Just look them up, and it's a flight school.
Ah, that makes sense. Very cool.
Yep.
How did you look them up, by the way?
Just went online and looked up AmeriFlyers of Texas, and it says flight and pilot schools. So
Awesome.
they're a commercial flight center. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, great. So you just Googled them. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jim
that's
also-
awesome.
Yeah, Jim also made it a note that a lot of the things we saw in the database when you pulled up AmeriFlyers were Pipers and C-172s. How does that little airplane get 24-hour flight time? And so, you know, is there a way to go back from the flight history, short of clicking the tail number and then going back into the database to see what that plane really was?
That's a great question. So at this point, I have not built the functionality that actually looks at the different legs, right? So if that aircraft took off, landed, and flew all day long, that flight history for that one entry will be all those different legs. I am working on something that'll actually detect, oh, it landed, and so that's going to be its own entry versus the next time it took off and landed. It's not, the data doesn't come to me in that sort of a way. So that's sort of post-processing that I would need to do, but that's a good question.
Okay, so one way to solve that though would be to turn on traces and actually look at the hops as I go on the flight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So so let me do this. Let me do 1 day, or let's make it 2 days. And I'm going to go ahead and run that report again, and I'll stop it once we get, enough data. We'll probably be able to see it. Oh, and I'm going to turn off the show traces as they pull in, so we can sort of get some of this information. I might need to start this over again. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, all right, that's going to be enough. Let me stop that and pop the starting location. No, that didn't work out. All right, hold on one moment. So yeah, the last piece that I didn't actually talk about was this this icon here, which is the trace icon. So when this is enabled, it will show all traces as they are loaded. Or you can have them all off, and then you can look at them as you like, pick out each flight. So all right, so my map is getting a little weird. So I'm going to sort of restart here. I'm going to turn off flight history mode. I'm going to rehome myself. There we go. And I do not like this map, so let me go back to a different map style. All right. And so, okay, good. We got a good map system going here. Let me pull up my watch list again. And let's do a different group here that doesn't have so many. Well, that is an active flight school, 14 out of 49. All right, so let's look at, oh yeah, let's pull this water police. I don't know how that got in there, but yeah, let's check them out. So let me grab the time travel flight history on those 2 aircraft. And I'm going to burn the list. And great. So let me go back 15 days. So we'll probably get something for sure. I'm going to leave that off and run the report. So it's going, grabbing all the hex codes that flew those different days. And we've already got a hit here. It's probably going to be in California, right? Yeah, Lake Havasu, that's in Arizona. All right, so now let me turn on the trace for just that. And I'm going to pop to its starting location. And now we can see that trace. All right, so let's see. Oh, here was one that's a little bit longer. So I'm going to turn that one off and enable this 11-hour. And there you go. So now we've got, you can see that it looks like it's got 3 legs here. Back, forth, back. Did that do it for you, Ren? Answer your question? Okay. So this would be a way to, again, just show single traces and sort of look at each one as they go. Perfect.
Yeah, that was Jim's question, but yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Perfect. Good question. Good prompt. Thanks, Fran, for bringing it up. All right. Yeah, it looks like these guys really just back and forth to Havasu. All right. And again, you can just turn them, once they've already rendered, you can turn them all on by just clicking on that. All right. So while I'm here, let's talk about some trace anomalies. This is going to be one of the tips and tricks that I was going to cover. So as you may know, SkyGlass, the data from SkyGlass is all crowdsourced, all by individual feeders from the ADSB Exchange network, and that network's been building up over the last, several years. I don't know how long he's been in, been in business, but I think probably 10, or not. No, I'm sorry, since ADSB protocol went in, which was in 2020. So anyway, the last several years, and so need to keep in mind that if there isn't a feeder in the area, the trace may look strange. All right, and so I'm keying in on this a couple of things here. You'll notice that the traces sort of follow a nice flight pattern. Some of these, top ones down. Some of these look a little strange. I'm not sure exactly if let me bring the height down a little bit more. Yeah. All right. So to my mind, this does not look like a proper trace. It's an extended line that's perfectly flat or perfectly level, right? Now, if someone has autopilot in their aircraft, they may have a very tight trace that seems very flat, level, straight. But often if you're seeing very long segments that are absolutely flat and perfect, it's probably because they lost feeder reception in one area and then were picked up in another. And so the software just paints the line between them. I am working on an upgrade which actually discern the sort of, like, if you go to the ADSB Exchange site and look at the traces, they actually have different colors that show the confidence of this trace is low, or it's not there, missing data, but then it picks up here, etc. That's not part of SkyGlass at this point. All right, did that make sense? So for example, in monkey sit reps, you'll see these traces that go across the planet, right? And they're just perfectly flat and they sort of traverse the whole thing. That's because, like, it left out of LA, is heading out over the ocean, and then the trace is picked up on the Japan side, which is on the other side of the planet, that's sort of crossed over the international time zone. And so SkyGlass is not smart enough at this point yet to sort of make that distinction. And so it just, it'll show the whole trace, but it'll show the point connection from one side to the other. That's an anomaly. Another anomaly that you might see is a trace that has a big vertical spike, right? And we get these sort of big spiky traces. That's because the transponder itself is reporting altitudes that are inaccurate. And so the data is actually coming in, it's like at 100,000 feet, and then it's at 30,000 feet, back up to 100,000 feet. There's a C-17 out of Egypt, Eggy something. They're always flying over the United States, and they're horribly bad with these spikes, and they're always jumping up and down to 100,000 feet. Obviously, the aircraft is not doing that, but the transponder is reporting the bad data, and so that just gets locked into the system. All right, so there are some things to be discerning about. In my last intro, somebody had a really good question. They were saying, oh, I'm watching this aircraft that I suspect is doing weather manipulation, and it's got these strange traces. And as we talked through it, it became clear that it was a missing, it was flying over an area that didn't have a feeder. And so the trace looked like it came straight down to the ground and then picked back up again. It's because they lost feeder reception and then picked up feeder reception. But the first, when it was first picked up by that by that feeding ground station, the altitude wasn't detected, and then it was getting the full data, and so it has this kind of strange trace. All right, that was a little bit of convoluted explanation. I hope that made sense. Any questions? We're okay. All right, great. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go. I'm going to go back to the database and just share another couple of quick tips that I found. Let me turn off the traces. We clear all that and open up my database interface. And I'm going to go ahead and clear my entry here. And so I always find the Leos very interesting. There are two things I wanted to search on. The law enforcement aircraft, and you can find a lot of those by just looking at, searching on police and the owner operator. Let me do a search on that. We'll probably get, max out the returns. But you'll get almost every metropolitan area that has, a helicopter or some other kind of aircraft that's part of their police force. You can lock those down. This is another way, obviously, if I wanted to, drill down deeper, once I've got one popped, like this Mesa Police, I can click on that, go into this input panel, paste. I'm going to clear my returns and then search just on that. And now I've got all the Mesa, police department, and we've got some other, ones that had a partial match here, aviation unit, et cetera, et cetera. And we got 18 in this little group. So that might be an interesting way to sort of build up a watch list. I also like to do, let's do sheriff. And you get a lot of the same kinds of different aircraft, from different metropolitan areas. Okay, cool. And then another one that I found interesting was rescue. And there's a fair amount actually out over Australia, like this one. This is a training operation, but there's some other ones that do fire and rescue kind of stuff. Fire would be another interesting search term. If you're into watching that kind of stuff and what's happening. Someone have a question? Susan, I saw you pop up. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you then, just so we don't get any back channel talk there.
I have a question real quick.
Go ahead.
I don't see where you can limit, I see, like I saw in Alabama show up. Can you limit these searches by, if you put your area in Alabama, or can you sort this by state?
No, because there's nothing in the database that tells me where that aircraft is registered. You'll have to do that either. Now you could do that. So let's take an example. Let me just find. So a couple things to note. So I have my limit returns on. So I'm only going to get 100 in the list. So if I were to continue to pull the thread on this fire channel, I would want to increase my limit returns. So then we go to 200, hit search. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to find the upper limit, right? You don't want a runaway search. A runaway search, as an example, would be if I was searching on type and I wanted to see C-17s and I have partial match, C-17 is also going to return all the Cessna 172s, right? And that can be thousands of aircraft and bogged down SkyGlass. So you just kind of want to keep bumping this up until you get all of them. So let me go ahead and clear again. And we'll make this 400 now, search. And this will probably give me my upper limit. Nope, not here yet. All right, so maybe this is a bad example, but I'm going to keep pushing through. All right, so now we'll go 500. You can see as it really starts to load up all these different, the data. Okay, good. So we found our upper limit, 427. All right, so now I would start to just try to troll through and say, and you're in Alabama. So I'm trying to see if there's anything here that pops out as an Alabama. These are going to be listed in ICAO order. I am working on a sort. So you click on each different field and it would sort in that way, but that's not quite there yet. All right. Well, so let's say I'm just going to choose this Groveland as an example. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. Miami-Dade. All right, let's do something local here for me. So I'm going to pick on Miami-Dade. So what you would do is you troll through, find that area in Alabama that makes sort of sense to you, and then just do another search on that, like I've done for Miami-Dade. So I'm going to clear, pop into this area, hit Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. Now, think about this too. When people file their owner operator or do a purchase of an aircraft, this is all manual. Like people are just, humans filling out forms, stuff like that. So you're going to get some variation. It might be fire and Dade rescue, fire and rescue, or just fire rescue, or maybe it'll be just rescue. So you may want to search on different things until you get the results that you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this rescue part off, and then we're going to get Miami Fire and anything that has those results in it, or at that field. So you can see, yeah, great example. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department, right? If I were to just grab the department and search on that, then I would miss these other ones. Make sense? Okay. This is a good segue. Department, also a fascinating thing to search on. So I'm just going to pull this to my clipboard. I'm going to paste. I'm going to go to the beginning of this field and start deleting those. Okay. All right. So it's just searching on department. Let me bring the limit returns down to something like 100, just so it's fast. Hit search, and we'll get a lot of very interesting things. What I'm sort of looking for is this. There's interesting ones in the U.S. Department, right? Department of State, Department of Agriculture, and Forest Service. And then you can like, oh, hey, that's kind of interesting. We can click on Department of State, and then again, pull the thread a little bit, clear, search again, and now we've got a lot of these Department of State. But again, remember, department fully spelled out, and the DEPT, there may be other aircraft that are in that list that have a slightly different variation in their owner operator. Public safety, good one. Let's do that. I actually have not actually done that search before. Cool. Yeah, great. Oklahoma Department of Public Safety, Highway Patrol, that would be another one. And again, HWY, or it could be in there as HI, fully spelled out, Highway Patrol. I'm going to remember that one. I have not added these guys to my list. This is great stuff. Cool. NASA. All right, good one. Yeah, drop in some search terms in the chat if you want. Yeah. So keep also in mind, as if you're getting these very long lists, you want to go through, and once you add it to the watch list, and make sure that the owner operator is actually correct. You may get something in here where the guy's last name is, Nasaurus or something like that. And they're going to be in there, like this guy, Vil Nasano, not part of NASA, most likely, right? So you'll want to filter that kind of stuff out, make sure you're not getting it. And the other thing I would say with regard to this NASA piece is you'll get, you may actually have some that are owner operator listed, National Aerospace, Aero and Space Association, whatever the non-acronym is. Yeah. Okay, good. Fun one to pull. The other interesting one that I found is weather. Whoops, got to spell it right. This is how I actually brought some of this information to Monkey when I found the South Texas Weather Modification Association, right in the name, weather modification. Interesting stuff there. But again, we got like somebody, this Mr. Weatherall, he's just a guy with the last name that has weather. So you'll want to make sure you can filter out some of that stuff. But that may be other ways to find some interesting information. And again, utilize this click to clipboard. Click there, clear, paste, search again, and now you can get just that fleet. Add them to your watch list as a group, WX, etc. Cool. Making sense? Good stuff. All right. I love the nodding heads. Any other search terms that might be interesting? CAP, cool. Civil Air Patrol, I'm assuming, right? Yeah. Let me clear the results, do a search. All right, so we're going to get a lot of extraneous stuff. You know, Sky Caps is in there. We might want to do something like Air Patrol. That might give us a better results. Let's see what that does. There we go. Yeah, USAF, Civil Ops Patrol, Civil Air Patrol. Yeah, that was actually better. So you think about that. CAP, actually, they're not in there. Most of them are not in there as their as that acronym. You'll have to type it all the way out. Good one. I like that. Civil Air Patrol. Making a note. And what was the other one? Public safety. All right, cool. NRC. So I'm doubting that NRC will be in there as NRC, but what I would do is search on nuclear. Clear that. Let's see what that comes up with. Yeah, here we go. National Nuclear Security Administration. Yeah. Yeah, these are all great. United Nations. I would put in probably United Nations. Again, just keep in mind the things like department, the DEPT, there'll be a lot of like Department of State. So let me do US DEPT and search. So it's not all the way spelled out. And if I typed in department, right, that's not going to pop those either. So you'll need to do sort of 2 searches to gather that sort of data. But again, you can always just keep them as the same, like US DOS, Department of State, you know, add these to the group, add this to a group, and then go back, do another search, add that to the same group. They'll be, you know, added together. Okay, cool. Holding the thread. All right. Any questions? Did I see hand raised? Nope, not you, David. Okay, thumbs up. Excellent. All right, so let me go back to my agenda here, make sure I'm covering everything. All right, so we did some cool stuff. Well, yeah, let's do an obvious low-hanging fruit here. Oh, actually, I think Trump's plane is under DT. Is that right? DT, I'm gonna put a DT in a space. I know it's already in our watch list, but that might be something interesting to find. Someone drop into the chat if you guys remember what that, what his owner operator was called. Was it DT Operations? DJT, maybe that was it.
GJT.
Let's try that. Clear and search. There we are. DJT Operations. Yep, and I've already got them on my watch list. Yep. Is that the right one? 7. Yeah, 757 AF. Thought it was interesting that it had an AF. Kind of like Air Force. Huh. All right, let me clear that. Okay, cool. All right, so we did about the watch list stuff. We've talked about how to do the flight history reporting. Okay. All right, so the last thing to talk about that was on my agenda was how to do a, do some investigation in time travel mode, like go back in a different time and date and see what you can see over, something that happened. So always a fun example is the Nord Stream. So let's do that. Oh, let me do a quick tips and tricks part of this while I'm doing this. So we're in military mode, but what I want to do is open up the location picker, which is this target there. And I remember that the sort of closest area of the Nord Stream, nice center location was this, I don't know how you say it, a Kirk Kebby, AAKIRKEBY. And that's in Denmark. That's that little island out in that in the Baltic Sea. All right. Okay, so once you have homed to a location, I like to add this into my favorites, and now you can, quickly move back and forth, build up your different areas. If you've got some watch list areas, the favorite home locations is a great way to be able to bounce around. As you can see here, the CONUS in Europe come as defaults or presets. Then when I've added, Andrews, Ukraine, etc. All right, so now we got this a Kirkby. All right, and so now I'm going to jump into, now that I've got my home location set, next thing I want to do is actually get into time travel mode and dial in my time and date. All right, so we click on the advanced options, which is this sort of complicated plane in a gear with these extra little tentacles coming out. That will pop up this panel here. Time travel mode is the globe with clock. So we click on that, we'll get a warning saying, yep, we're going to need to burn all live data. Click on proceed. All right, let me clean up my UI a little bit. Okay, great. So like I said, first thing you want to do is dial in your location and your search radius, which I have here. Next thing you want to do is dial in the time and date of meaning. And again, this is going to be in universal time code is the basis, but then this home is going to give you the sort of update on what that is in a more easier way. So time and date in question is 9/26. So I can go here. I'm going to dial that back in of 2022. So we'll go back 2022, 9/26. And the time was early in the morning, 0:30 UTC. Oops, we go, let's go back to 0. And bring this up to 30. And the seconds are not really that important at this point. Okay, who's never used time travel mode before? This will be the first time getting kind of doing a time travel thing. So this is the first time. Okay, great. And so on the other side, those who have used time travel mode before. Okay, all right, cool. So the time travel functions are essentially, well, you're always in standard mode, meaning you're not in military mode. It's not going to be filtered for military mode, meaning your class filters will apply, and your home location and the search radius apply. All right, and so it's, as you probably know, longer the search radius, especially if you have the normies enabled, you're going to get a lot of data. That's going to take a long time for SkyGlass to render and process. So depending on what you're doing, you may want to turn that off. I know that we're looking for military flights, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off my the blue aircraft class and get this search radius up nice and wide. And then basically you've got there's two ways to sort of get at the data. You can load a snapshot by clicking on the main load button at the top of the main button stack. All right, that's going to give us just a one-time load of what's there, or you can start playing back either forward or backwards in time. Backwards in time is kind of an interesting way to do it. This time we're going to do forward. And let me get my sliders up here, make sure we're going to be, and get the sizes dialed in. All right, I'm just kind of looking, making sure I do have all my settings correct. We got the date and time. All right, And so the other couple of things that are useful is your speed and the step time. The speed is basically how long between the next refresh attempt. Okay, it will finish the last reload, but then it says, if you want to go kind of slow, you'll turn the speed down, and it will take, it'll take a beat, a half second between the next cycle. Or if you ramp that all the way up, it's not going to wait, and as soon as the last one's done, it'll move on to the next one. All right. The step is also the major lever that you've got here. This is going to go through as fine as the data is every 5 seconds, or you can step that up to like, every minute, etc. All right, so let me pause this. I'm going to hit stop, and I'm going to just check my settings here and kind of figure out why we're not getting any of the data. All right, the sweeper is on. We do have our time and date set correctly. Right? Yep, 2022. All right, I'm going to turn on the normies just to make sure, yeah, we are getting some good data. All right, let me turn that sweeper off, and I'm going to push forward again. We should be getting some military aircraft that are showing up here. So I'm gonna bring the speed back up. Rana, you seeing something? Looks to be everything. I'm seeing them blip up and off again. That doesn't make sense to me. Something must be wrong. All right. I'm going to start over. So I'm going to hit stop, and we're going to turn that off, turn this back on, see if that kicks up anything. Nope. I'm going to burn. And I'm going to dial in the date and time again. All right.
I was gonna comment that maybe that, that place wasn't active at that time. 9/26/22.
Well, I know it was active. See, for some reason I'm getting it's just clearing itself out. So it seems like the sweeper is messing with me. Well, we're definitely getting a bug here, which is always a little embarrassing in a live training session. All right, so let me attempt a reset here. So this actually is correct. But I'm seeing aircraft blip in and then blip off. So that tells me that the setting there's something wrong with my settings, or corrupted in some other way. But everything does look kind of okay. Do a load. Well, boy, I tell you, the folks that were in the time travel mode, or the deep dive, I know we actually worked this example and it did work. So something is going wrong for me here. I will have to investigate that. But we've got the processes. I've covered that. Traces are on. Nope, that doesn't matter. We don't want to see the traces. Well, we could, but let me bring that down. Let's try it. What the heck? See what happens. Oh, you know what may be going wrong here? Let me reset. And I'm gonna remove all these as well. Okay, and now I'm going to close the watch list. I'm going to burn the traffic. I'm going to turn off the type list panel. All right, and let's go back into the date and time again. So this is 9/26. All right, and now we move forward. I'm going to turn off the traces just so we don't get everybody. Okay, all right, so I fixed it. Okay, so the issue was, it looked like either in the type list panel or the watch list panel, we had an isolate or hide enabled, which is just sort of another layer of filtering. So that's why I was seeing sort of aircraft pop on and pop right off, because they were getting filtered out based on, looked like the watch list. I think that was what happened. All right, so good. Woo, I recovered. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, we've got military flagged here. And I think it was this BART. I'm going to turn on the sweeper so the aircraft doesn't persist. And all right, I'm going to step the time up just a little bit, just so we can see him move a little bit faster. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was this BART 12 that was that refueler that this Nord Stream P8 came in and picked up some fuel from. So let me increase the search distance a little bit more.
Wasn't
I think you are muted. Go ahead. Arbex. There you go.
wasn't that the refuel, or didn't it do it over Poland and then the P8 came in from the direction of Iceland?
Yeah, exactly right. I'm
Okay.
thinking it's this, well, it came in as an NA. I think it was after the fact we determined it was a P8, but let me keep going, moving forward. And yeah, we'll see it pick up over here and do the refueling pattern. So now we got some, I think we got some things that are alive here. We're seeing what's happening. Yeah, pretty sure this is the BART that came in. All right, so I'm going to just step up to 1 minute and increase our speed a little bit, just so we can get the show on the road here. Yeah, here we go. And yeah, let's let me turn on the traces, and we'll get the trace for him and the trace for this BART rendering. I'll reduce the UI a little bit so we can see. And here we go. Yep, there we go. You can see this guy's starting to do his marshalling pattern. And there, that NA picks up. They start doing their dance, picking up. Now he's got fuel. And if I remember right, so let's see, started picking up at 1:37, and I think it was like 30 minutes of refuel time before he peeled out. It was kind of nuts. Seemed like a long time for me to pick up fuel. I mean, I've never refueled an aircraft in flight, so I don't know how long that kind of stuff takes, but you know, when you're refueling on the ground, it's not, you know, once you made that connection and you're taking on gas, it doesn't take that long.
Go
Yes, sir.
speak to that a little bit. It may have been due to the elevation of the planes and the current winds at that pattern when trying to catch a fuel net from the tanker. That might take a hot minute, depending on conditions up there.
That is a great point. Yeah. Okay. So great. So now it just started to peel off a couple minutes ago. So it took about an hour for them to do the refueling. And that is a great point. Yeah. To catch that boom and to line it up. I mean, I can only imagine how difficult that maneuver is. You know, that, I mean, that's like the tightest formation you can get, right? And to keep it so steady. And yeah, if there was any kind of winds happening, that would make, as you said, a hot minute and a stressful minute, I would imagine. All right. So let me keep going. And but you're getting the idea. This is how you dial in the aircraft location and position when you're doing some investigation. I also like to turn the sweeper off, because that way, if something, as it goes off of radar or isn't being received by a feeder, then it persists on screen. In this example, exactly, this NA stopped transmitting. Right. I think it was when they, I speculate, again, I'm not an Air Force guy, but I speculate when they went into full mission mode, they turned off their transponder. And then when they were done doing whatever they were doing, they turned it back on when they started to bug out. So I turned the sweeper off so that it actually isn't, moved or removed off screen. But what the impact there, as I've talked about before, is you will have aircraft that are going to hang out at their last known position. And so you're not getting a realistic, representation of what was live at that time. Because you'll get, especially at the boundaries of the search radius, they'll kind of stick when they go off radar in that sense, because of the settings, if that makes sense. All right. Good stuff. How are we doing on time? 3:15. So we've got about an hour and a half. So you'll see he's just kind of stuck there. He's not reporting, and then he'll pick up here in a second. But as I zoom in, you can see that long. So let me pause here. I'm going to adjust the type color because this end color is kind of dark, hard for me to see. So I'm going to pick the NAs, and let's make that start color, or end color rather, nice and bright. There we go. So now as I rotate around, you can see, let me get closer into this aircraft. Down. Oops. So I'm using the keyboard controls to sort of get co-locate. There we go. There we go. So you can see they took a hard down, nose down, right? They did a little circle and boom, down before they stopped transmitting. And so let's play forward until we pick them up again. I think it's about 15, 20 minutes later. Also notice they were caught with no call sign, and then they what's being picked up by the feeders is this bunch of @ signs. I'm not certain that that's actually what's being transmitted. This may be an anomaly or part of the back end of the feeding system that might take a non-entry and fill it in just to give it something so that it has some data. I'm not sure about that. Okay, while we're waiting for this to pick up, any questions, comments? Biggest air refueling mishaps caught on camera. Cool. Boy, John's got some links. Thank you, sir, for all the fun info. It'll be fun to review that when we're done. Any questions? Any other incidents you'd like to recreate and investigate real quickly? I'll show you how you dial it in. Nothing. Okay. Good enough.
I would actually I wish we could go back to June 10th, 2018, when Air Force One left Canada heading for, what was that, Singapore, the Kim Un-jung talks, and off the coast of Washington, Splash 1 and Splash 2 occurred.
Right. So a couple of the data is not full during that time, but let's do it. Let's qualify it. I've never actually done this. I haven't looked back. So in the ADSB exchange system, when they first started, was back in 2016. The data is actually recorded, but it's not as fine as it is now. In March of 2020, that's when they formatted, they normalized the format and started doing every 5 seconds. Okay. And then yeah, in October of 2020, it's very granular and very solid. I think they got everything dialed in. So that's, I know we can look back as far as October of 2020. But anything before that may be spotty, but let's try it. All right, so location was which coastline? East or west?
Sorry, looking for the mute button. It was off the coast of Washington State. Whidbey Island,
Would-be?
Whidbey Island.
Whidbey.
I can't spell for WHI.
Oh, that picked it up.
All right.
It was simple. WIDBY. All right, cool. All right, so let's do that. Let me dial this in. And let's see here. You said it was 2018
18,
and the date?
June 10th.
June 6th. June 10th. And any idea what time of day?
I believe it was 4:53 in the morning.
In
that
that in that local time.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a great example. So again, we're dialing in UTC time, but there is a home location time. So that's kind of what I'm adjusting and then making sure we're in the pocket here. Again, the time was
just before 5 a.m.
Okay, great. So I'm going to do 4:40 a.m. in this local time zone. We'll turn off the emergencies and let's. So it was.
I wanted to comment that the spelling for Whidbey is, I think there's an H after the W.
Yeah, it's interesting. It went ahead and popped anyway, though. Let's see
Yeah,
if that makes a
I think
difference.
yes, I think that.
Well, you know, this lookup is sort of a natural language, and you can, I think it says, oh, you really meant this, and just gave it to me anyway. But anyway, okay, so we've got Whidbey Island here. And was it off the coast of this area, or was it off of the coast out here in the ocean?
The video shows Whidbey Island as a backdrop. So it's Puget Sound area, and I'd say in that area.
So we're in the zone here. All
Where
right,
your
let's
marker is.
Yeah, let's start loading up some traffic and see what we got here. All right, so let me get my speed down. We've got our time and date set. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and do a snapshot. No data return. Okay, so again, we're in this zone where the data is kind of spotty. So I'm going to bring the step down to the minimum and just play forward. And what SkyGlass does is it goes out, looks for the data. If it doesn't find the data, it'll move forward to the next instance. And you'll see we've got some no data return here. So it hasn't found anything yet, but when it does, it'll start rendering it. Let's see. Well, let's hope we get something. Oh, wait a second. 7:40 p.m. Let's stop that. Oh, I think I got the time AM and PM messed up here. All right, so let's do that. 4:40. All right. So again, no guarantees since we're out of the pocket of when I know the data is good. So we may not get it, but we'll see. Worth trying. Getting something. Okay, so I'm assuming that it actually is picking up some data, but it's not actually able to render it. So I think the format was different, and so it's bugging out with SkyGlass. But I will tell you, as soon as it, once you're into it, the data is guaranteed for October 2020 moving forward. So unfortunately, this is be great. I agree. Very interesting example. I'm going to write this down though. So let's go 6/9/2018 and
That would be 610.
I'm sorry, 610. All right,
Thank you.
you bet. So I'm going to go into the data and see what the data is like, and maybe if I can make some tweaks, that might be a good upgrade. Give us a bigger window of what is available inside of SkyGlass. We'll see. And this was, let's see, 4:40 a.m. Whidbey Island. All right.
To the other viewers, am I getting the time correct? I believe it was 4:53 video, weather station backdrop, Whidbey Island, picked up what we were told was a weather balloon, and then we were later told it was a military helicopter with a powerful searchlight directed downward. And my critical thinking, my eyes saw a missile with the propellant underneath, so I wasn't buying what they told us. But anybody else remember that? Okay, I'm bugging out. Thanks.
Okay.
Is that the one that was related to Oprah's Island out there in Puget Sound?
Yeah, if you recall, there was a twin engine turbine that was commandeered by ground personnel off at SeaTac, and he was doing flips and loops. And
Oh yeah, the
They-
guy that
they-
stole the plane. Yeah.
yeah, and they scrambled 2 F-18s. They went afterburner. 7 minutes later, they're from Oregon coast to over the Puget Sound daylight. Video cameras picking it up. They fired upon it, hit it. Funny how it just started doing smoke, and then it spiraled down into the ground onto an island. My experience says if you get hit with an air-to-air missile, you're just going to be shrapnel. You're not going to be intact. But anyhow, that was the story, and it was interesting.
All right. Very good. Well, I'm sorry we couldn't pull the data up for it. Any other questions before I wrap up?
So I guess the important thing is when you're putting in all this information is to have the time difference, the UTC calculated properly.
Well, it'll do the calculation for you. Yeah, it'll do the calculation for you based on the home location. So you make the adjustment in the picker down here. This is adjusting the UTC, as you can see, but based on your home location, it will adjust, right? So that's how you can kind of use it to get in the right zone. But yeah, if you do that calculation ahead of time, that might be more helpful, especially if it's over, crossing over the time and date. It'll be tomorrow in UTC and late night over here, something like that. That's a good point. All right.
Yeah, hang on. Susan's asking how do you say the location is a favorite?
Perfect. So if you dial in, let's like put in I'm going to choose a location with the location chooser, which is again activated. Let me make this larger. Activated with the target button above the map zone. This is that area here. Enter your location that you want to make a favorite. I'm just using LAX as an example, and you can click on the target button, or you can just hit enter, and that will. Let me get out of time travel mode, so clean up the interface a little bit. All right, so LAX, that should pop. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it already did update. Yeah, LAX is right there. All right, so as a different example, SFO, San Francisco. And then all you need to do is in the favorite locations header, there's a little plus sign with the teardrop. Click on that plus sign, and it will add that into the bottom. And then you can edit the label by clicking on the pencil in the teardrop, and then you can type in whatever you want, hit enter. one distinction thing that's always important to know about the favorite locations panel, if you click on the word, it will rehome. All right. As an example, if I click on Andrews Air Force Base, you'll see the camera pops and the search radius box follows. If you click on the target, then it just moves the camera around. So let me do that. I'll zoom now over to San Francisco. You'll notice that the search radius box did not follow, right? I'm just moving the camera around. If I click on the word themselves, then the home location changes and the search radius box follows. All right. If you're in mill mode, it's a little bit faster to zoom, meaning use the target button to move around, because then only the map has to reload and refresh. If you've got a bunch of traces loaded and you're in military mode and you rehome, then everything has to be wiped and re-rendered, and that takes a little bit longer than just sliding everything over and then just filling in the map tiles. All right. You bet, Ian. Okay, great. So we'll end it there. Let me stop the share. And so again, we've done some great monkey business deep dives for today. We covered how to get MonkeyWorks' watch list from his website, how to import that into SkyGlass, how to optimize that reload time. We talked about how to move your own watch list up and down into the cloud and how to import and export. We talked about some of the live viewing techniques when you're in military mode, pulling open the type list panel and how to isolate and hide different types. We talked about how to determine the counts from that as well. We talked about how to dig into the database to kind of pull different threads on different search terms. That was a great segment, a lot of good search terms from that. We talked about how to pull flight history reports from your watch list groups. And the last thing we did was we went into the time travel mode and did some investigation. And that was good because we found a little, the issue there, you need to make sure that if nothing's showing up, make sure that you've got your hides and isolates disabled from your watch list and from the type list panel so that everything will render correctly. Okay, cool. So super appreciate everybody being here today. Really appreciate all your support and your interest and the great questions. If you do want to support SkyGlass and the development of SkyGlass and all the work that I'm doing in a deeper way, a couple different ways to do that. We've got some fun branded merch as I'm sporting here that you can find in the shop. And you can also join the Patreon channel if you want to kick a little bit every month as well. Patreon members always have sort of first row seating at these live sessions. And I'm always giving them pre-release notifications and all that kind of fun stuff on new features and all that grooviness. But hey, just a SkyGlass subscription does a tremendous amount for supporting me and the work I do. So thank you so much. If there aren't any final questions, we'll leave it there. Please leave any feedback you want in the chat, and we'll see you at the next deep dive. All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. All right.
Have a good one.
Cheers, everybody. All right. As we say, stay frosty and SkyGlass out. Cheers.